All right, hi everyone. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to look at the option chain and how to really navigate on vocabulary within the option chain. Really what I'm going to be showing you guys in this video and giving you is a pair new of glasses so you guys can understand everything that you will look at the option chain. So let's go down to it. Well, when you go into the option chain, you're always going to have the different expiration dates. So it shows 25th November, 2nd December, 9th December. This is all labeled in red. Again, these are different expiration dates of each chain. So if you want to find the closest expiration date, it will always be at the first one up top. So the most recent expiration date, the next one will be on the 25th of November. So 25th November 22nd is just 25th stands for the day. November, which is NOV, stands for the month. 22nd stands for the year. And parentheses 5 means that there's 5 days left until the expiration date. And weekly stands for weekly options. Weekly options expire every Friday of a week, and they're issued on Thursday. Now, the reason why weekly options exist is because they add in more liquidity in return, and they give out a better return within the expiration chain than just having 12 of the monthly expirations. So what does that mean? Well, for some of you who don't know, in the option chain in the past, way before, many years ago, when options were kind of beginning, options just had monthly expiration dates. They didn't have weekly expiration dates. Monthly was only so in monthly options there was only 12 in each year, because monthly options expire every third Friday of a month. So we know that in total there's only about 12 months in a year. So if it's only every third Friday, there's only one expiration per month. That's only 12. Now, when options became more liquidable and there was much more people involved into it, buyers and sellers, if the company had a lot of liquidity like Microsoft, Apple, and Metaverse and Amazon and different other stocks, what they did is that they added weekly options in order to add more liquidity for people to be short-term trading within those weekly options, because there was more volume there than having monthly options, because they were closer to the expiration date. It was like an easier way to enter the stock. Now, because of this, though, obviously the monthly expiration dates later on will probably not have a big spread if you're looking at a liquidable option stock, a stock that has liquidable options. I will discuss that a bit, how to know if they have liquidable options. But usually people would use, so for me, if you're trading in an option of like a month, you want to look at weekly options. Majority of the times it depends what sort of strategy you're using. If you're looking to enter very long term, like 6, 4, 2 months up to a year to year and a half, which is what people do, is they get monthly options. Why? Because the extrinsic value maintains itself, as it's not been fluctuated, because there's still time left. There's much more time left. So therefore, that's why weekly options are going to be a bit closer to expiration date, because they're meant to be like that. They're weekly. Now, let's so if you look at this circle, if you look at today's options, you can see it's circled blue. And I just want you guys to focus on this area. Don't focus on this. I only just look at this area. Now, if you look at the different sections here, you're going to see the IV numbers, percentages, HV percentages, and the VWAP. For me, though, I just pay attention to the current IV percentile, because it helps me find if the volatility is high or not, which helps me kind of decide if, when the volatility is high, options tend to be expensive, and when volatility is low, options tend to be cheap or not expensive. So I will explain, though, more in depth within this in the vocabulary slide. Again, monthly options are always going to be an option that won't say weekly. Usually it would just be in Thinkorswim like gray, but it won't say weekly. Weekly options are always going to say weekly. Now for this is also very important. So if you see this area, these numbers right on the right side of the option chain, you're going to see these different numbers. Now, if you look at the most recent expiration date, you will see it says 29%, 29.27%, and it shows 6.6, 24 positive and negative. What does this mean? Well, 29.27% indicates the implied volatility of all those options at the expiration date. And the 6.624 that says positive and negative is just the standard deviation of what the stock can move at the expiration. So if, because it says 6.6, what that means is that if Microsoft can move up or down in the share price, it will move $6.60 until expiration, either up or down. That's all it means. Now that number is calculated based on statistics and what it's done before, and I like to grab that number because it could sort of kind of fix my profit target, my expectations within the trade, which can help my risk to return within the option strategy or the option trade itself. What I can expect from the price to do, because it's calculated with many different variables. But you can say also in a way that the standard deviation is really a volatility. It's sort of volatility because it's telling you where the price can go. So let's get into this. That when you click on one of these option chains, so I'm clicking the 25th November that expires in 5 days. You're going to always see a left side of numbers and a right side of numbers. The left side is always going to contain calls. These are all calls, and you can see it says calls. On the right side, it's always going to have puts. All right, so it's very important because if you want to buy a call, you always have to buy from the left section. If you want to buy a put, you want to buy it from the put section, or if you want to sell a call, you do it from the left. Sell a put, you do it from the right. So, these dates are basically the expiration date that this option has, as you see here, 25th November. So all the different strikes here are all expiring at the same expiration. They're all in an option chain of the same expiration date. Now, these are all the different strike prices that are available at this expiration date. So by custom, when you guys see the option chain for the first time, you might have the strikes by default 10 strikes. For me, you can put it as much as you want. If you delete 10, you can put 50, you can put up to even 100. So that's just something important for you guys to understand. With this, you guys have somewhat glasses to be like, oh, okay, so these are calls and these are puts. And we'll discuss about what these numbers mean too. So now let's get into the vocabulary words. This is very similar to being a doctor because these sort of formats help you like if a doctor had a toolbox to know what the patient needs or to prescribe to them in order to help what they're having trouble with. So in this, what's our trouble? It could be possibly our trade and what to expect from it, and how to monitor it really. So so theta. Well, for some of you who, I'm pretty sure we all know what theta is, but in theta and options within the option chain, it will show a number, and that number just means that it shows how much the price of the option should change each day as it gets closer to expiration. So we all know that when you buy an option, the theta is always going to be negative. Why? Because when you're buying, by every day, theta is going to decay because you're buying. You have extrinsic value that you have to go into. So as it gets closer to expiration, theta is going to be negative because it's going to lose value because time is less tomorrow than what it is today. If you had 20 days from now to, if you had let's see, let me look at my calendar. Right now it's the 20th. If I go to the 4th of December, that's in total 14 days. If by tomorrow I would have less time value because yesterday there was 14 days, now there's 13 days. That's what theta shows. And whenever you're a seller, theta is always going to be positive because theta works in your favor. As time decays, your premium gets worthless and you actually almost get to keep the premium because you want to buy it back lower. Now with delta is very important. It's an estimate of how much the option value would change based on a $1 increase or $1 decrease in the stock. So what does that mean? Well, if we look at the option chain, let me show you. So if you look at delta right here, I'm just going to look at 245 strike price. You can see it says 0.32, which means 32 cents. Right now, the current price, this is the bid and ask. But if we grab the mark just basically means the price between the bid and ask of what's a reasonable half of the bid and ask, because they will always be different prices from the bid and ask. What it shows is that delta moves, but delta's number shows that by a $1 increase, the option premium would go up or down. So what that means is that if Microsoft went up today by $1, this option contract, which cost $154, will now be up to $186. Why? Because the delta is 32 cents. So per $1 move, this delta would give the option worth 32 cents. Same is to be said if the stock went down, because I'm buying a call, this option contract would now be costing 32 cents less. It would be about $122 now because it's 154. So that's delta. That's very important to understand. Now, mark. The mark price, which I just showed you, is the reasonable considered price between the bid and ask, and it's calculated by the risk control system. The bid is the highest price a buyer will pay for security or stock. The ask is the lowest price the seller will accept the security or stock. So what does that mean? Well, whenever you want to buy a call, let's say, at this strike price, you're never going to buy it from the bid. Why? Because the ask is what the lowest price of all sellers have agreed upon to the buyer. So because there always has to be somewhat a fair deal within, the stock market and also in the options. The ask and bid is always going to give you, for at least for the bid, it's always going to give you the seller's reasonable lowest price to sell you. So if I'm buying something, obviously I'm doing a deal with the seller. The seller is telling me that he can give me $169 if I want to buy at this strike price for a call. But for a seller, you're making a deal with the buyer where the buyer's telling you a reasonable price, the highest reasonable price that he could give you. Now, whenever you want to buy a call, you're always going to go to the ask and you're going to buy from the ask. You're going to click on the ask. And let's say if I already bought this, when I want to sold it, I have to click on the bid. Why? Because I'm selling. I have to agree upon a buyer now because I need to sell it now. If I'm selling, I need to put it throughout the bid price. So you could see that within the ask, of course, a buyer always wants to get the lowest price. And the seller always wants to get the highest price. So the bid is asking you always the highest price that the buyer can give you, but they always want a low price. And the seller always wants a higher price, but they'll give you the lowest price. Well, if you look at this, well, obviously the ask is going to be higher always than the bid because the seller always wants something higher and the buyer always wants something lower. So you get it? So that's why the number on the bid is lower than what it's always going to be in the ask. Every option you see, the ask and bid, the ask is going to be worth more than what the bid is because the seller is selling high and the buyer is buying low. But this might be somewhat counterintuitive because you might say like, oh, but I'm buying sort of high then. No, you're actually buying low in a way from what sellers can give you. But for me, I always bargain with the price. I always bargain to buy it lower than what it's given because I'm not just a person who goes like, oh yeah, I'll just buy it from you. No, I always make a bargain if I can, right? If I can't, then I'll just deal with the options. But every option has this. This is literally what the option market is. It's an entire auction, not option, but auction of the stock. So we understand that. Now there's something called the last price. So the last price is the last recent trade price a person has filled the option in, right? So what this means is if I go in this tab and I go to last and I go to that same strike price, you can see that even though the ask and bid is 140, 169, the last person who traded this option was able to get their order filled in at $164. That's all it is. It's just the last person. The net change stands for, it's the difference between a last period's closing price and the current trading's closing price of the option or security. So what that means is if yesterday your option costed $1, right? And then today it cost $2, the difference there is $1. That means your net change is one or $1. That's all net change means. Now, the probability OTM is the initials for out of the money. So the probability OTM is the probability the option will stay out of the money at the expiration date. For the gamma is the rate of change between the delta and the security, which is the stock. This means if there's a high gamma value, it shows that the delta could change enormously with even very small price movements in the stock or security. So what does this mean? Let me show you. If I go to gamma, right now at this strike price, it shows that the delta is 32 cents, right? So what that means is that if the stock moves up tomorrow by $1, this contract would be worth 32 cents more. But however, it shows that the gamma is 5 cents. So when it's 5 cents, it shows that it can move more than what the stock will move towards. What this basically means in a way is that if the option moves up 32 cents when the stock moves up by $1, well, because the gamma is 5 cents, that means it would be actually 37 cents because it's a 5 cents plus to the delta. That's all it means. It just means that if there's any sort of price movements, less or more. But this also could be, remember that delta is just sort of like a deviation. It's like the standard deviation here. This could be said too that if the price went down to $1, your option would go down by $37. But if it moves up, it could go up by $37. So that's what it means. Of course, that also means that the delta could change by 5, right? So it's just being logical about that. Like it could change by 5 increments more. So if this changes by 32 up, this would be 37, and 37 up more by 5. The rest goes. Now, Vega. So all of these are sort of Greek words. Greek words were sort of established for these sort of values within the options. But Vega Vega measures the amount of increase or decrease in an option's premium based by 1% of change in the implied volatility. So what does that mean? If the Vega shows it's 1, if it's 2 cents, right? What that means is if implied volatility went up by 1% today, my option would be worth 2 cents more. Of course, it could be said at the same time that if implied volatility went down by 1%, my option would be down 2 cents less. So that's what Vega shows. Whatever the number is at Vega, it just shows how much the option would be affected based on the implied volatility moving per 1% of the change. That's all it is. Now, this is very important, this part. Intrinsic. So we all know what intrinsic value is, but in options, it's just when you see in the option chain, you'll see it just say intrinsic. But intrinsic just shows you how much intrinsic value the option has. Extrinsic shows you how much extrinsic value the option has. That's very important. I'll show that eventually. But this part's very important too, that the open interest. So the open interest shows you the number of buyers and sellers still holding the option. So what does that mean? Well, if I go to open interest, this is what it looks like. If I look at that same strike price of 245, if you look at the open interest, which is this, you can see 4,231. What does that mean? Right now, there's currently 4,231 people still holding that option, whether they're sellers or buyers. That's a good thing. You never want to buy something or sell something that has zero open interest because no one's holding it. When no one holds something, there's too much of a spread or a skew of the current bid and ask, because there isn't as much. Because remember, when there's more volume and there's more people, there's a more agreed upon. That's sort of like politics in a way. When there's more people, there's a more like stable agreed upon price. When there's less people, it's sort of a black and white scenario. So of course, this doesn't matter if you still hold the option and it went down to 6 people because you hold the option. But of course, it could somewhat affect you because when there's less people, maybe the bid might be a bit pretty separated from the ask. But this usually happens either if you're looking at two things. One of them is that if you're looking at a stock that has no liquidity, you will see really that there's almost no one trading these options. Or second, if you're looking at a liquidable stock, usually there's less people when it's a strike too far out of the money or when it's a strike too far in the money. Why? Because if these people way too far have most likely already secured their profits, and the people over here most likely didn't enter these because they're too far or they lost these strikes in profit. So that's what that means. Now, Theo price. Theo price just stands for the theoretical price. The theoretical or the Theo price shows an estimate value, how much the contract has based on its probabilities to be in the money by expiration. So let's look at the option chain. If I look at Theo price, which is right here, at that strike price, it says it's 154. What that means is that based on its value, it's calculating its value based on its probability on this strike to be in the money by 5 days, which is the expiration. That's just it's sort of a different valuation to give the option itself, which is Theo price. So those are really, there's still a few. This one is the option statistics, which is very important to understand. And if you see here, it shows it's 52 weeks IV high. So the 52-week IV high stands for the highest IV has gone in the past 52 weeks. 52 weeks are really 1 year. And remember that IV stands for implied volatility. 52-week IV low stands for the lowest IV has gone in the past 52 weeks. And for me, the most important, what you will see the most important area to look at in these statistics is the current IV percentile. Now, current IV percentile on its name on it out of itself is made up by, so the way how you get the current IV percentile is it's calculated by the percentage of days in the past 52 weeks where IV has been the lowest compared to its current value. So what does that mean? It means that in right here it shows it's 55%. Right now, in other scenarios, I'll explain to you, but in by its name of itself, it shows if it shows it's 55%. What that means that from the past 52 weeks, for 55% of those 52 weeks have been the IV has been lower in value compared to the current value right now. So anything that's lower in value in 52 weeks than what it is now, you could say that the current value is actually pretty high. It's expensive. Obviously, it's like a moving average. When it's too far from what it's been currently, when it's too high, that's expensive. It's too much of volatility of what it's done based on the past. Of course, it could be said vice versa, invertedly, where if the IV right now has been too low compared to what it's been in the past, that means it's cheap, right? Because it's been lower than what it's done in the past of volatility. But for some reason, which is funny, a lot of people, some people know this in Thinkorswim, but for some reason, Thinkorswim, the current IV percentile is really the IV rank. I'm not sure why. I think there was a mistake there because the current IV is literally the percentage of days of the past 52 weeks on where IV has been the lowest on current value. But IV rank stands for the total of the high and low of what you can get in averagely. And whatever the IV rank is, whenever it's a low percentage, that indicates that in over time to current value, the volatility is lower. When it's a higher percentage, volatility has been higher than normal. But for some reason in Thinkorswim, it shows that current IV is usually the IV rank. Again, I'll give you guys an indicator if you feel a bit comfortable holding the IV rank. You guys will have like a download link within the below this video itself. But yeah, that's how the current IV percentile is. Now for the 52 weeks HV high, the highest, it shows that the highest HV has gone 52 weeks ago. So HV stands for historical volatility. So when it says 52 weeks, it means what was the historical volatility seen before 52 weeks ago. HV is a moving average of prices over the previous 52 weeks. So this is important to understand, to differentiate, because HV and IV are not the same thing. HV is how volatile volatility has been in the past, Rather with IV, which is implied volatility, is what volatility can move in the future. But it fluctuates as volatility changes every day with IV. So HV is what volatility has done based on history, while implied volatility is what it can do, what it's anticipated to do. And whenever volatility changes tomorrow, the expectation for the future changes because the facts change of what it's doing realistically. So that's important to understand. Now, for the current HV percentile, the current HV percentile stands for the fluctuation of past prices over a period of time. I don't really look at that because I rather use the current IV percentile. So implied volatility is the expected volatility of the stock on its lifespan in the option. It's basically what I just said. And VWAP, maybe if you someone know, maybe some of you have used the indicator VWAP, but VWAP is always in the option statistic because it's used as a volatility measure. But the VWAP is actually an indicator like the Bollinger Bands, but it accounts the volume too. So when VWAP is more than double of what it is in standard deviation, that's an abnormal movement. When it's above the standard deviation, there's too much volatility to what it has done previously. Again, it's very similar to Bollinger Bands in that sense, only with volume. But the reason why I don't use VWAP is because even though it's similar to Bollinger Bands, it leads, though, with distorted information what the price is actually doing, because the problem with VWAP is that it's a single day indicator. It's only tradable as an indicator for today, and it restarts the next day. So it doesn't show a continued sentiment, which I don't like. So I rather use a Bollinger Band than a VWAP. And again, some people, it depends on what type of trading style you're doing. For me, because I don't do intraday trading, I do more sort of, I do swing trading and day trading, but I don't do intraday trading. So that's why I don't use VWAP, because it's just a single day indicator. Now, that's been the majority of all the vocabulary words. However, as I just told you, I don't use every single one. The most important ones that you need to know in everything that I will show you is theta, absolutely. Delta, gamma would be used in a portion within, but it's also important to understand too. Vega, also another thing similar to gamma, where I would use just a portion, but it's at least good to understand it. And of course, bid and ask are completely essential wherever you're going to do in options. The mark is essential. The current IV percentile is essential because it shows you what volatility is, which can help you know if the options are expensive or not. And the IV rank is, again, the IV rank is the same as current IV percentile in Thinkorswim, not in any other brokerage platform. Because in Thinkorswim, they've made the mistake to add an IV rank for current IV percentile. So they've added IV percentile to IV rank, which is really funny. But really, when I look at Thinkorswim, I'm looking at the IV rank rather than the current IV percentile. I know that sounds confusing, but again, I will give you guys an indicator just to clear yourself a bit more solidly in case if you get confused. You guys will have a custom IV rank indicator. Now the others are probably out of the money. Of course, that's essential. The standard deviation on option chain, essential. Open interest, essential. And intrinsic and extrinsic, very essential. So those are all the ones that you should pay attention the most.